By the time we got to that vault final, it was a case of we do 5 vaults in the warm-up. Then we go in the arena, we do 2 vaults to warm up, and then we do the competition vaults. So then we got that extra option of doing the warm-up in the arena beforehand if we needed it. I was like, we practiced this 3-day kind of competition days so many times in the gym, in the prep camps beforehand. I can't even tell you how many times we practiced doing those 3 days.
Crowd anticipating something special once again. Oh, it's a tough act to follow, but he's done it again.
Excellence can be created, it can be replicated, it can be taught.
The Inner Game Podcast, Season 2.
Boom! So, welcome onto the Inner Game Podcast. We have with us today Shannon Archer, a Scottish international gymnast who's competed at 2 Commonwealth Games and recently in the 2022 Games came out with a bronze medal in the vault. So thank you very much, Shannon, for coming on and talking to us about the life of a gymnast.
Yes, thank you very much for having me on.
Cool. So let's dive straight into it. But just before we start, could you just run through again for the audience some of your accolades, starting maybe from your younger days and how you've kind of progressed and built up, as you were saying, you making your way into the GB squads and then how that has gone from there and things like that. So if you could just, walk us through some of your, great achievements that you've had so far, Shannon, that'd be great.
Yeah, so kind of when I was younger, because gymnastics is a very young sport, so you start everything a lot younger than maybe other sports. So started representing Scotland when I was 9, 10, doing internationals, all within Great Britain at this point, but doing different ones throughout the years. And then 2010, got into the GB squad for the first time. The way they done it back then was off the British Championships. And if you made a top 8 on the all-around of the British Champs, you then got invited onto GB squad. So managed that in 2010, which was very unexpected because it was my first British Championships. It was just going just to be there, see how we got on, just take it from there. Ended up finishing the top 8 and got invited to GB squad, which was, a mega surprise. And in 2011, got picked for a couple of internationals representing GB. And one of them was an international between Great Britain and Sweden. And we came away with the team gold and I came away with the all-around gold as well, which again, wasn't really expected for me. But and I made a couple of mistakes on the day, so we weren't really sure what we were going to get. Then came away with the all-around gold, which obviously very happy with, couldn't have asked for anything more. Yeah. And then we done an international again for GB, over in Germany, where we came away with team silver. So that was first start of the year, 2011. Then back end of the year, I went to the Commonwealth Youth Games for Team Scotland, which was in the Isle of Man. So not overly sunny, but all the family was able to come over and watch, which was nice. But then got injured back end of 2011. That then required me to have surgery in 2012, which was on my elbow. And then took me out of competitions completely so that was the end of 2011, didn't compete again until 2014.
Cool.
And then, but when I then came back to competing, I was a senior gymnast, which is a completely different ballgame to kind of what I left as this little kid
Yeah.
in gymnastics. And I came back and I was a senior gymnast. I'd grown, and like everyone was like, "Oh my god, I don't even recognize you." So yeah, I kind of came back from that, and then I wouldn't say I really found my feet in competition again until around about 2016, 2017.
Yeah.
And 2017 became Scottish senior all-around champion, which is kind of like, it was a big step for me in kind of being like, right, I'm back to where I want to be. It has taken a very long time to get there, but I've managed it, which then helped me get picked for 2018 Commonwealth team, which is in Gold Coast in Australia. And I made all-around final and vault final there. And I finished 5th in the vault final in Gold Coast. It was like very close to a medal.
Yeah.
And then, to be honest, when I came back from Gold Coast, the plan was to retire.
Really?
I kind of came back from Gold Coast, told everyone I was retiring, I was done. Then I volunteered that year at the Gymnastics European Championships when it was in Glasgow. And I was kind of taking the gymnast round and I was watching and I was kind of like, I don't think I'm done yet. Like, I still want to be out doing that.
Yeah.
So then decided to come back to beginning of 2019. But then just as I was ready to compete again, pretty much COVID hit.
Oh.
So then obviously I went through COVID, didn't compete, and then until end of 2021, where it was kind of, I mean, everyone was feeling it. The first competition was a bit like, oh my God, it's been a long time.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, kind of back into 2021, got myself back out there again. Then 2022, qualified myself for Commonwealth Games again. And then, yeah, I made the all-around final, vault final, and bar final this time.
Yeah.
And, yeah, came away with the bronze at vault.
Well, what a journey, an up and down journey. Hey, Shannon, I bet. Thinking back, going through some of that, thinking, gosh, there's a lot happened there.
Yeah, no. When I go through it, sometimes I'm like, God, how am I still going?
Well, in fact, whilst we're on that note, then let's go with that. Then, why are you still going? What was it that first, pulled you into this great sport of gymnastics? I know for me, just especially when I was younger, just growing up watching gymnastics on the Olympics. I'd look at people like you, just thinking like they're like superheroes. These people doing what they're doing. Like, how the hell do they do it? I always loved and appreciated, what gymnasts do. And obviously, when I was younger, it was I'd be watching this stuff, and like you'd be never seen any British athletes. We were just no. To me, in my head, it was just an accepted thing. Gymnastics is not our thing, And then obviously, it's exploded, hasn't it? Since around 2008, something around there. What was it that's kind of pulled you in to doing what you do, and then obviously sticking with it now?
Yeah, I think when I first got into gymnastics, my older sister done it, and then I would go with my mum to pick her up and drop her off because she's 4 years older than me, so she would be there training. I'd go with my mum, I'd be like, Mum, can I come pick her up? And then I'd be that kid that's in the gym, probably that really annoying kid that everyone was like, oh, because I'd go in and I'd run around and I'd jump on things. And then Mum would be like, come over here, like, you're not doing it, we're just here to pick your sister up. So I kind of realised how much I just enjoyed being in the gym and just jumping on things and trying things out. So my mum put me into a class, and then kind of very quickly from there realised that I kind of had a bit of a talent for it. And I was enjoying it. I was always loving when I was going. It was like one time a week to begin with, and I'd absolutely love going. So I kind of just started from there, and then very quickly progressed through going into development squads, and then getting into an elite group, which then I started competing when I was kind of 6, 7, 8.
Yeah.
And then just went from there, and then got into Scotland squad when I was around 9, 10. So it does happen if you're in the sport and you kind of pick it up and you do well from it. But in that first few years, it does kind of all happen quite quickly.
Yeah.
That you move from from a rec group doing 1 hour a week to then progressing into a development group where you get more hours, and then into the elite group where you get even more hours, start competing and kind of things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it kind of all started from my sister did gymnastics.
Yeah. And what about now then, Shannon? It's what's always been obvious as an outsider to the sport, as you were saying at the start, it's a young person's game, isn't it?
Yes.
Obviously someone like Beth Tweddle, she kind of probably helped break some of those stereotypes a little bit about age and things like that. And she carried on going. Did she still go to London? I think she carried on to London, didn't she? And then I think she ended it there, didn't she? What's kept you here going again now? Bear in mind that you've come back, you've had this great success in the Commonwealth Games last year, and then that whole injury word has popped up and set you back again. What's because obviously this podcast is all about trying to find out what's going on inside of the mind of somebody like you, and how is it that you keep motivating yourself to do it. And for me, the work that I do with athletes is trying to make sure that they can keep bringing that joy, that enjoyment of what they're doing. Because once that's gone, and it doesn't matter what thing you're doing in life, whether it's just your normal, your day-to-day job. Yeah. Once the enjoyment goes, this thing then starts to become more about pain than pleasure, so a big part of what I do is helping athletes reconnect to the reasons why they're doing what they're doing, getting back to that younger self, that free-flowing kind of creative version of themselves that just got into this sport because they just love doing it. I'm just curious as to what is actually keeping you going internally now.
Yeah, because I think, I'm turning 25 in July, which is kind of considered on the older side of a gymnast. But definitely, Beth Tweddle kind of started breaking down that barrier because she didn't get her Olympic medal until she was 27.
Whoa.
So, and then kind of as the years have gone on from London, people are starting to kind of stay on past what is considered the older age for gymnastics, which is kind of my age. And we've got Becky Downey, who's was at Europeans this year, got a medal, and she's 31.
Whoa, is she? I didn't realise.
Yeah.
Gosh.
So it's very much kind of now kind of opening up people's eyes to kind of, it's not just once you hit 20 or once you hit 21, you're then too old to do the sport. Because in gymnastics, it's very difficult because we first turned senior when we turned 16 in that year, which to me, I still think you're a kid at that age. You've got some people going to Olympic Games who are 15, just turning 16 in that year, and they're considered a senior.
Yeah.
So it's very much I've been a senior for 9 years now. So, and it seems like I'm old because I've been a senior for that long, but really, I'm only 24.
Exactly, yeah.
In the grand scheme of things, I'm not that old.
In any other sport, you actually haven't hit your prime yet. In any other sport outside of gymnastics, you're not at your peak yet.
Yeah, but I think it's hard because you start so young in gymnastics, so your body takes a toll by the time you get to my age. I've been doing the sport 20 years now. So the body definitely takes a toll. But then I think once you get to my age, it's then figuring out training smart rather than training hard, which is kind of what I've figured out over these last couple of years, that you can still very much do it, but you just might have to adapt things, change things, not do as much as you used to be able to do. Maybe do because we have 4 events, maybe not doing all 4 every single day that you used to do, kind of finding ways around it. I think that when I came back from Birmingham, everyone goes on about these post-games blues that people get. and it definitely hit me hard when I came back from Birmingham.
Really?
But then it kind of, just because you went from the highest high that I think I've ever experienced to then in a split second, you're back to normal life, back to reality, going back to the gym, going back to just doing normal things. And it kind of took me a while to kind of readjust back to normal life, because you're very much in this Commonwealth bubble of being in the village, being around athletes. You then get a medal, you do all these media things where everyone wants to see you medal and have interviews and chat to you about how amazing you've been at that Commonwealth Games. You then come back and you're like, God, like, back to normal life, all of that stopped.
Yeah.
We're very much like, came back from that. And there was a few kind of moments where I was like, I'm not sure if I can come back from this.
Yeah.
Because in my head, I kind of went to like, how am I going to top that? Like, that's kind of been one of my goals for a long time. When I first realised I wanted to go to Commonwealth Games, it's kind of been an outside goal that, I'd love to get a medal. And then after finishing so close on Gold Coast, and then me and my coach going into Birmingham, we never ever mentioned that we wanted to get a medal. Like, the word medal never came out of our mouths at any point. It was always kind of, we both knew in the back of our head it was possible.
Yeah.
We just didn't want to physically say the words. So when it actually happened, I was like, oh, like, this has been the goal, this has been the dream for as long as I can remember. Now I've hit that. I was like, where does it go from here? Like, I've been at the highest of highs. Now I'm like, well, how am I going to top that and any other achievement that I do? Which took me a while to kind of switch the mindset of, it's okay if nothing ever tops that again. You can get other achievements within the sport that's, yes, you might not see it as good as that Commonwealth medal, because that was the first one ever, but I can still get enjoyment out of what I'm doing. And it was very much a case of like finding my why again, because I feel I was very much going through a phase of going to the gym, doing a little bit, going home, and just kind of like going through the motions of it and not really kind of having a goal or anything like that. But kind of like finding my why I'm doing this sport very much helped me to think, right, let's set some targets, let's set some competitions to aim for again, so I can kind of really get into it. Because I'm very much a person that I like to have a competition that we're aiming for, or something that I can train for.
Yeah.
So I feel like if I just go into the gym, train for the sake of training, now at my age, I'm like, well, I don't see the point in doing that. I just won't do much.
Yeah.
So yeah, kind of, then we eventually set that target of, right, we're going to aim for this competition. And then kind of, yeah, it's taken a while, but we've kind of managed to get back to a point where I'm kind of going in, got a target, and know what I'm doing, so we're kind of aiming for it again.
Yeah. Yeah, you said some, great things there, and gave some great insights into multiple different things. And just one thing I did just note down there is, you said, how am I going to top that? And when I got a little bit lost was at which point you said that. Was that after the 2018 or after the medal in 2022? Were you saying that to yourself?
So that was after the medal.
Yeah.
We kind of set that target. So I was like, I don't know how we can ever top this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess, as you said, a lot of the work that I do with athletes is helping them you said the word yourself, reframe your mind. And what happens when things start to go wrong for an athlete is they get stuck in what I call a problem state. And it's this state of mind which is locked into like an emotional state. And with that emotional state is a whole host of it's like a story, this narrative of cycling thoughts and, doubts and insecurities. And the work that I do is help them break out the problem state and put them into what I call a power state. And there's lots of different ways of doing this, but the most simplest way is actually doing what you said, which is becoming very astute of the internal monologue and what you're saying to yourself. And the questions that we all ask ourselves directs where our mind goes. Our mind, our beliefs about something are like magnets to attract, what type of beliefs that we have and what questions we're asking. And I think just what certainly seems quite powerful for you there is that you actually asked that question, But what I did notice, if I'm really honest there, Shannon, that the thing that I really work on with athletes, which they don't realize how powerful it is the tone of the voice. And what I noticed in how you said that to yourself was, along the lines of, well, how am I going to top that? So you've got that question there versus this way of saying it. How am I going to top that? How am I going to top that now?
Mm-hmm.
And that shift in the tone, subconsciously, the brain is reading that, because the first way of saying how I said it then it is a more doubtful tone. How am I going to top that? Like there's doubt in the tone. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
One of the things that I do with athletes in a scenario like that is start working on the tone. Start to pinpoint the tone. The tone is driving like the emotional feeling within inside of us, and just cranking that up. If you ask that question, if you was to remember back to a time when you felt really confident and remember what it looked like, it sounded like and felt like, and then ask that question and then listed answers to it, you will put yourself in a far more positive state and you'll come up with a completely different set of answers, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
And it certainly seems like you've gone down that road, and what really was profound in listening to you there, Shannon, was that you had the guts to delve down into the why. And so many people generally in life, and so many athletes, they don't actually take the time to connect to that.
Yeah.
Because what our why is our values. And most people and many athletes, they live their lives just unconsciously. They've forgotten why they started doing what they were doing. And as you have done, you've got older and age, your priorities changed, your things that you want to achieve, everything changes. You're not this 9-10-year-old girl anymore who's doing gymnastics, just dancing around having a great time. Everything's changed. And one of the things that knocks athletes off the pedestal is that as they've matured, they haven't realigned and changed their values. So what you have done there, it will be so powerful for you, because you connect to that why and you make that reason why you're doing what you're doing. You make it so invigorating for you that, and then you assign a goal, a target or targets to that, and bang, you will take on a whole new different level. So just curious if you could just expand on that side of things a little bit more.
Yeah, I think because when I came back from Birmingham, I would say I kind of went through a phase of when I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. And everyone was like, oh, you can't stop now. Like, you've just got a medal. Like, think what you can achieve, like, beyond this. I think it was a case of I then felt not pressure, but a case of like, oh, well, everyone thinks that I can do more than this. Like, maybe I keep going to see what I can do. Then I kind of was like, I then felt I was deciding to carry on for other people.
Yeah.
Which is not the way to go about it at all. So I was like, oh, well, everyone's telling me that I can't stop, so I should keep going because everyone's telling me this, and I'd be letting people down if I stop now. And then to be fair, I've done a lot of work with sports psychologists post games up until even now, still working with her now. So I'm being like, no one else matters in this decision. Like, if I want to stop, it's because I want to stop. And I've got to be happy with that and not worry about letting my coach down, letting people down that have, like, little kids that kind of looked up to me from getting a medal to then being like, I got to do this for myself. And I guess being a little bit selfish in that, being I got to do what's right for me.
Oh, yeah.
And not what everyone else expects me to do, which I think took me a while to kind of be okay with that, because then it was even like, oh, like, I don't want to stop because I'm doing really well. My coaches, we're doing really well together. Like, then he's going to find it hard if I stop. And even like stupid, like thoughts like that were going through my head of, well, I've got to keep going because all these people kind of, I'm doing well. So these people kind of want to keep me going kind of thing. Then I was kind of like, right, it's kind of stripped it all back. And the main question was, do I still have a why for doing this sport? Or am I purely doing this for everyone else?
Yeah.
And kind of when I sat down and kind of figured it out and worked out my why, and then kind of, I do feel like it kind of took a weight off that I then wasn't thinking about anybody else when doing my gymnastics and purely doing it for me, which I think has definitely helped get me back in the mindset of, I'm ready to get back out there, I'm ready to compete again, because I know why I'm doing it and I'm not doing it for anybody else.
That's excellent. And would you be okay in sharing a little bit more as to what that why is? You know, if you could break that down a little bit more precisely if possible.
Yeah, I think kind of parts of it is obviously coming back from Birmingham and having an injury right off the back of coming back. And then for me, I feel like it could have been easy to be like, oh, I'm injured, let's just call it a day. I feel like for me personally, it was, I want to prove because but I still very much love what I do. And I didn't want an injury to then decide the end of my career. So I kind of wanted to prove to myself that I am strong enough to come back from this. And I can get there.
Sorry to interrupt you there. So my internet just went off at my end, and as you started to explain all that amazing stuff, it literally just froze. Go back. I'm really sorry about that. Just go back through that again, please, if that's okay. So as I say, it'll all get edited out. I'll just rephrase what I said. So yeah, would you be willing to just expand on what this why is, what you found out when you delved down into your mind to dare ask the question, because that's one of the other things. Many people don't go there because when they open the box and ask the question, it might start revealing things that they don't want to know, because the answer could have been, I'm done. That could have been the answer, couldn't it? It could have been, I'm ready to stop now. I can't do this for everybody else. I'm going to do it for me. And that's not enough anymore. And that can be scary, very scary to do that. So just expand on what you learned and what you uncovered when you did that, please.
Yeah, I think definitely coming back from Birmingham and having an injury straight as I came home was very much, I feel like I could have taken the easy way out of being, oh, well, I'm injured. I'm kind of struggling. I don't know what to do. Let's just call it a day. I feel like that very much could have been the easy way out of just being like, right, I'm done. I'm injured. Like, let's just finish there. But I think I very much wanted to prove to myself that I am strong enough to come back from this injury and from feeling a little bit up and down after the games. I feel like at the end of the day, I want to have an ending to my career that I can be proud of. I don't want to finish the Commonwealth Games, got that medal, but then decide to continue but be injured and then end up calling it a day because I'm injured and I can't quite get back to where I want it to be. Didn't want that to be the end for me. I feel like I want to be, when I look back at my gymnastics career, I want to be proud of every single thing I've achieved, and I want to be proud of how I've ended it as well.
Excellent.
I want to look back and be like, oh, like, I went through that injury. I went through feeling a bit low after the games, but I managed to come back from it, and I had an ending that I can be really proud of when I look back in however many years' time and I'm no longer doing the sport.
Yeah, that's amazing. And may not want to go there here, but it seems that in doing this, going through this process, asking these questions and finding out these answers, am I correct in saying that when you do end, and you do call it a day, if you don't, go and get another medal at the Commonwealth Games or something, it seems to me from what you're saying that you actually would be okay with that, to some level, like you found the inner peace of, I just need to know that I'm going to go for this, and for these reasons that you've outlined. And if I don't get it, that's okay. But the fact that you have taken on the challenge of finishing it on your terms for yourself in the way that you want to do. So it almost seems like that's enough, for you. Would I be correct with that?
Yeah, I think going through these last 8-9 months from the games, that's been something that I've really had to work on, because it's like throughout my career, I've always been aiming for a Commonwealth Games. So kind of off the back of Birmingham, we're kind of taking it as it comes at the moment. I don't know when the end is going to happen, but kind of sitting down and realising if that's not in our Commonwealth Games, that's okay. Mm-hmm. Like, it doesn't always have to be that level of going to Commonwealth Games and fighting for a medal. Like, I've done that. Yeah. That was amazing. That's kind of there, and that will always be there. But kind of I've now accepted the fact that if I finish on something that's not that, that's absolutely okay.
Yeah.
And I can still set myself goals and things that I can be proud of that isn't a Commonwealth Games.
Yeah.
And it very much took me a while to get into that mindset of, I was kind of fighting with myself of, well, it's always been Commonwealth Games. If it's not a Commonwealth Games, it's not good enough. So it took me a while to switch of, yes, it might not be a Commonwealth Games, but other competitions that you do at this point in my career will be just as proud a feeling for me than going to a Commonwealth Games and winning a medal.
Yeah. What if you go to the Commonwealth Games and you have more fun than what you've ever had before, and you soak in the experience in a way that you haven't been able to do previously because of the expectations, the pressures. What if you can go to this next one and just really embrace it, for yourself, and it become like this really enjoyable experience for a change, that would be a really amazing way to kind of, close that chapter, on this part of your life, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And as I was saying before, it's all about how we as people and as athletes, how we are framing, our problems. One of the things that I actually do with athletes, I get them to imagine that they see themselves in their problem up on a movie screen, and they step into it. So they're in their own mind and body, and they're kind of immersed in what their problem is, if that makes sense. And they attune to like their thoughts, their thinking, their beliefs, their feelings, and things like this. And then I ask them to imagine just floating up and imagine being in the mind and body of somebody else that you kind of admire. It might be a coach, a family member, it might be your sister or somebody else. And then get them to imagine, you're imagining being them looking at you on the screen. And what that does, it disassociates you from the problem. So you get a different perspective on it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I keep walking the athlete through being in different perceptual positions. Then I imagine, right, just float above it and look down. And each time they move through from a different person or different perspective, whether it's from further away or up above or down, what this exercise is actually doing is, as I said, first of all, it's disassociating them out of the feeling of this anxiety that's wrapped around this issue. In your case, what do I do, with my career and life type of thing.
Yeah.
But then also by imagining being different people and kind of looking at that, it then gives you different insights as to, as to not just being stuck in your own mind, if that makes sense. And it certainly seems that you've been able to explore maybe different ways of doing the same thing, and then you can kind of come back to yourself and go, right, I've got all this information now. I'm happy with X, Y, Z now, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because I think it's very easy if you're the athlete in it to feel very stuck in your own head and in your own thoughts, and you can't. That people are telling you things, but you don't. You're not listening. You're not taking it on board, or you just don't see it. And you're like, well, I'm feeling like this. Like you feel like that fog's just around you, and you're like, I can't. Like what they're telling you, like that. Like I don't see it. I don't get it. That's not making sense to me. It's very easy to just kind of like stay in your own bubble of like, I'm in this position, I don't like it, like I can't get out of it. So it's very easy just to stay there. So I think it's hard to take that step of kind of what you were saying and looking at it from different perspectives. Because then when you do that, you then realize what these people are telling you, or you see different things that you weren't seeing before, which can then just help you just be like, oh, right, okay. Kind of take the pressure off a little bit and see what people are saying to then help work things out in your head a little bit easier.
Yeah. Excellent. I think you've described that, perfectly there, Shannon. And athletes in all different sports at some point hit this moment that you was in, sorry. And it's at that point there, if they either don't do the work themselves, they don't go there, they don't dare open the box themselves, or they don't go and seek help to help guide them through it, that's when the wheels come off, and silly things start happening, i.e. their life starts going out of control because they're all of a sudden they spent their whole life, as you said, Commonwealths, Olympics, national trials, all these things, and you've got these mini targets set out in front of you, and then you wake up one day and there's nothing there in front of you. What's the next thing? And then there could be this potential thing out there in the future, another competition. But then at that point, now being older and other things have happened in your life, and you're not sure if this, like you were saying, it used to always be about the Commonwealth Games. Well, what if that Commonwealth Games isn't just quite enough anymore, if you know what I mean? And then they get trapped in being in this sport and just lost within it. And that's when, some of the mental struggles can come in, and some people, in certain sports, that, their lifestyle starts changing, drinking, food, going out, partying, that type of stuff. And then they just lose their way. So I think what you've been doing, with the psychologists that you've been working with is just really helps kind of realign everything within yourself. And I'd imagine you feel quite a lot more centered in doing what you're doing outside of the injury at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like it's kind of going through all that process is kind of taking a pressure off a little bit of, like, when competitions come around again, I very much just want to go there and just enjoy what I'm doing, like, and not put that like mega pressure of, got to do well here, aiming for a medal there. Like, I very much I want to go to competitions and just enjoy it, because, I mean, as sad as it sounds, I don't know how many competitions I've got left.
Yeah.
It might not be that many. It might be quite a few. I don't know yet. So I want to go into every single one knowing, coming out of it, I want to know, like, look back and think, I really enjoyed that. I had a really fun weekend doing this, because I don't know how many I've got left. So I don't want to put that extra pressure of, got to do this, I got to do that. This has got to go well, like, kind of stressing myself out.
Yeah.
I feel I'm very much at that point in my career of enjoying what I'm doing, and what comes from it comes from it.
Excellent. That's amazing, Shannon. And I think in all sports, this is important, but in gymnastics, creativity even more so, isn't it? And if you are tight, uptight, and you're holding on to having to do X and get this done and perform this skill and this, if you're holding on to that too tightly inside of yourself, in that, even just having the thoughts, that can put the tension, in your body. And then for doing the types of things that you're doing, tension is, I'd imagine, the enemy,
Yeah.
And next thing you know, you're then not expressing yourself to your truest potential and to your truest self. And one of the things that I ask the athletes that I work with is, when you're competing, just tell me the types of states. And when I say states, I mean feelings that you want to feel when you're performing. And obviously for different sports, people want to feel different ways. So in certain sports, let's take rugby. You need a certain level of assertion, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
That you don't need with archery. Do you know what I mean? For example. So an archer might want to feel one way. They might say, focused, relaxed, and something else. Whereas a rugby player might say, I want to feel fired up. I want to feel focused. I want to feel assertive. And when I go through that process with them, trying to align what their states that they want to feel, very rarely do they say enjoyment, and I wait for them to go through. Tell me how you want to feel, and then I'll say, well, do you want to enjoy yourself? Yeah, and it often doesn't even dawn on them, that's how they want to feel when they're doing it, and it, I really believe that if athletes can just tap into that joy of doing their sport. The joy of doing it, which got them there. All of us who started playing, who have played sport and took it relatively seriously, it was for fun. It started as fun, and then it's like the world of sport then it almost imprisons us with all these other expectations. And I think as soon as athletes can break out of that, there's a freedom with that, and with freedom, that's when athletes can then start performing in the flow state. And that's what all the work that I do. I'm trying to get the athletes to the point where there's no blockages, what I call neuromuscular locks in the mind and body, break them free of all of those, and then start working with it in creating a state of flow. And once the athlete is in that state of flow, there is no doubts anymore. There is no pressure anymore. There's no expectations. They're just immersed in doing what they love doing. And I'm sure you're well on your way to getting to that point, Shannon.
Yeah, because I think what I've realised is that I do my best gymnastics when I'm happy, relaxed, not stressed about what I'm doing. That's when I then produce my best gymnastics. So it's very much both Commonwealth Games, I've noticed that kind of the trials to get there has been very stressful. I got to hit the score, I got to do this, I got to then make it. But then once I actually, for both Commonwealth Games, got to the actual competitions, I noticed that I kind of didn't feel overly nervous. I kind of was excited to go out there and compete. And then in both scenarios, done some of my best gymnastics. Vault final in Birmingham, I woke up an absolute nervous wreck. Oh my God, I'm stressed. But then kind of silly things me and my coach would sit and play games before a warm-up started. And I'd be we didn't talk about the gymnastics at all before. We were just playing games with a foam roller, trying to flip it and land it up on its side, stupid things like that, just before warm-up started, just to kind of take me back to, right, we're having fun, not thinking about the gymnastics, which then very much helped because it definitely calmed me down then going into the warm-up. I think definitely when my best gymnastics has been produced from me being happy with what I'm doing, enjoying it, being relaxed and kind of just going with the flow.
Yeah, definitely. And it was really interesting just listening to what you're saying there about, playing the games with your coach. And what you've essentially done there is you broke yourself out of the state, a nervous state, because many athletes fall into the trap of, in a scenario like like you was in there, that well, I've got this event that I've got to do in, I don't know, 40 minutes, half an hour. So I better get this right in my head, of what I'm going to do. And they just keep going over it and over it and over it and over it. But
Yeah.
how well they are doing that, and often they're not, often that rehearsal that they're doing in the head is a nervous voice, a doubtful voice, an anxious voice. And then they start trying to often visualize doing what they're doing, but because of how they've been talking to themselves in this anxious, nervous way, they've created an anxious state, a neurophysiological state in the body. Then they start mentally visualizing doing what they're doing in a state of anxiety, and they don't realize that they're doing that. So by you playing the games, it broke you out of that and just then freed you up to just step in and do what you do, because really, the amount of hours that you have put into doing what you're doing, you don't need to really be practicing it for another 30, 40 minutes just before you're about to do it. All the work is done. Your mind and your body has all the skills, all the techniques. All of that is locked into your subconscious mind. It's locked in. It is there. And just overly doing it in your head over and over and over and thinking about that, it's not going to make it any better. The job's done. The work's done. It's banked. Let's just go with it. And I really do think from what you're saying here, Shannon, that just that your ability to have broken out of that and just have some fun before you was doing that event has really given you that license to be kind of free in what you was doing.
Yeah, because it's like one of the first things I said to my coach that day was, I'm nervous. I need some distraction before we do this vault final. Like, I need to think about anything else apart from my vaults.
Yeah.
Like, we just need to have some fun. And then even like on that day, we got given like an extra warm up, because what we do, we have the arena that we compete in. Then we have like a back gym that we do all the warm ups in. And they gave us the option of like an extra warm up in the competition arena up on the podium if you wanted it. And I was like, don't want it.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, are you sure? I said, I don't want it. I was like, I've not planned for that. I planned for doing the warm-ups here and then competing. Yeah. I was like, the option might be there, but I don't want it. Like, I don't need it. And everyone was like, are you sure? I was like, yeah, I'll be fine.
Yeah. Again, that's another gem for any athlete who is listening and wanting to kind of help with their preparation for their sport, because there's different ways of doing it, but once an athlete has got in their mind how they want their lead up to be to their event, and that can be from waking up in the morning, to then getting there and all the other things that they do.
Yeah.
If they have kind of designed that movie in their mind to be a very specific way, if that movie then changes, that's enough to knock them out of their state, their performance state, because it's the uncertainty. Hold on, this isn't what I've planned for. What if that changes something, if you know what I mean? And it doesn't have to be that way. It all depends on what the athlete has done in the build-up. One of the things that I try to do with the athletes that I work with is actually imagine the different scenarios, and I get them to ingrain it in their mind. Just right, let's do it the way that you want it to go, and imagine it going exactly how you want it to go, feeling how you want to feel, seeing it how you want to see, and walking yourself through that. And then, right, now let's do the exact same thing and imagine it going wrong. Imagine something not going the way you want it to go. And then, but imagine you then still feeling how you want to feel and carry on as normal, and almost create like 2 or 3 scenarios of how the event could go, so that because some things happen, don't they, sometimes that are out of your control. And if that random event can throw an athlete out of their, as I said, their performance state, but for you there, you had the ability to say, I want to do that or not want to do that. And as you said, you knew yourself, no, this is what I plan to do. My mind and body is tuned in to going this way. and I'm going down that road, not over there.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's very much like we practiced, because it was doing, for that competition, it was like 3 days back to back, which apart from a major, you'll normally have maybe 2 days of like the all around and then event finals. Whereas for the Commonwealth Games, it was team final day 1, all around final day 2, vault and bar final day 3. So that day 3 is a tough one because the body is feeling it by that point.
Yeah.
So we very much practiced doing those 3 days and what we would do on those 3 days. And by the time we got to that vault final, it was a case of we do 5 vaults in the warm up. Then we go in the arena, we do 2 vaults to warm up, and then we do the competition vaults. So then we got that extra option of doing the warm up in the arena beforehand if we needed it. I was like, that's an extra 4 or 5 vaults that I don't need to be doing.
Yeah.
Especially at that point when I was managing pains and a little bits of injuries. I was like, that's an extra 4 or 5 vaults that I don't want to put my ankles through.
Yeah.
My body's already feeling it by day 3. There's extra stuff that I don't need to be doing because I know I don't need to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe it was a little bit like, oh, maybe I should take it if the option's there. But I was like, you know what? I don't need it. Like, I'm not planning for it. I don't need that many vaults. Like, I'm fine with it.
It reminds me of, I can't remember who it is. I've heard a few different boxers, but there's one who's standing out, and I can't remember his name. But I've heard a few boxers talk about how that was it. It was Nigel Benn. I think he won at least 2-time world champion anyway, back in the 80s, 90s, and he was got asked a question about his training. You know, how hard do you train, and this, that, and the other, and essentially he gave an answer that they weren't really expecting. He didn't massively push himself in training, and his theory was behind it that, you know, I wanted my best performance on the night. You know, I didn't want to have left it all in the training gym.
Yeah.
You know, and you do get that, you know, in a lot of athletes, and especially in boxing, where they've trained that hard that by the time that they get in there for the fight, the ghost, you know, they've overdone it. And I think there with you, I think, and I imagine that a lot of that has come down to, you know, your maturity, being that a bit older and, you know, I'd imagine when you're younger, you know, as we all are when we're younger, we're more impressionable. You might, you know, if you went back 10 years or so ago in that same scenario, you probably would have felt pressured into just, yeah, I better do this, even though there was a part of you thinking, no, you probably just would have gone with it. But being that bit older and wiser, the more intelligent, and knowing your body and listening to it was able to give you the right answer, which was, I'm not doing that when I don't need to. Let's save it for the main event.
Yeah. So I think even 4 years ago on Gold Coast, if that was an option at that point in my career, I'd probably been like, oh, that's an extra warm-up, I'll just take it. So it makes me feel a little bit better because I've done extra.
Yeah.
Whereas I think it's partly trust in the training that you've done beforehand. Like, I know that I can do these competition vaults with the warm-up that I've been given. I don't need to do an extra 4 or 5 vaults to then feel better in my head that I'm going to go out and compete them well. Like, we practice this 3-day, like, kind of competition days so many times in the gym, in the prep camps beforehand. Like, I can't even tell you how many times we practiced doing those 3 days.
Yeah.
So I was like, I know I can do it. Like, no matter how many extra warm-ups you're going to give me the option of, I don't need it.
Yeah. I'm so glad you said what I find is a crucial word there. And I have 8 pillars of what I think leads to sporting excellence. And one of them is trust. You know, if you do not trust yourself and the training that you've done and your abilities, then as an athlete and even just as a person generally, you're done. You got to trust in the process. You've planned this all out, you and your coaches, have planned it all out. You've done all that training. It's all been built up to this moment. You've then got to accept it and put your trust in yourself. I've done the work. I've done it. You'll never have a perfect kind of lead up to an event. That's just not how it goes. But you've given your best, and then you have to accept that and do it. And I just think that is another trap that I better do more. I better do more. And more. There's, more isn't always the right thing, and it often isn't. But we in sport, athletes get caught trapped in this world of thinking that I've just got to keep doing more and more physical work is going to make me get better physically and give me better physical results. And what I'm really passionate about with the work that I do with athletes is making them realize that it's not just about the physical. It's about managing this. The inner game. Just in the conversation that we had today, you've managed in that one games in Scotland, the Commonwealth Games in 2022. There's been all these different factors that was being imposed upon you, but what you were able to do is master that in a game. You won that game in your head. You were feeling nervous when you woke up in the morning, and then you found a solution, and that was to tell your coach, we've got to chill the hell out here and do something different. That's a little game, the little battle that you won there, that on another occasion, you might not have done that. You might not have had the fun in the lead up to you doing what you're doing with your coach. You might not have played those games, and then that led to overthinking, and you tightened up and you didn't perform well. And then another scenario there where you talked about, you could have done the extra warm-ups. You've won that other little battle there. That on another occasion you would have done it like you were saying. And it's all about being able to manage what's going on in here. And a lot of that comes with being able to trust what you've done. And if you don't trust in your training, in yourself, in your abilities, the doubt's there. So then you start doing reckless things that you don't need to do.
Yeah. Because as soon as I have any doubt about what I'm doing, then that's when things start to go wrong.
Yeah.
Or that mentally I start to find things really hard. Because even post games, there's been a few times where I've doubted if I will be able to do that level of gymnastics again, because it's been so long. Took a bit of time out after I come back, then the injury, then getting surgery. It's been a long time since I've consistently just trained to then be fit and compete again. There was very much times where I was like, God, can I actually do this? Mm-hmm. Can I get back to where I want to be? Then that's when you start to think, oh, well, I'm not good enough. I'm not going to get back to that point. I've got a long way to go, rather than kind of just setting the steps to get there. Exactly. So I definitely went through a phase of, God, I've not done these skills for such a long time. I got so many things that I got to get back before I'm ready to compete again, rather than being okay, we got to get this back. But even, for example, for vault, coming back from surgery, I was God, I got these get these competition vaults back. But at that point, I wasn't even running down a vault run.
Yeah.
We were well, what's the first thing to get us there? We got to be able to run down the vault run. Got to be able to jump on a springboard, which right now I wasn't even doing. So then was breaking it down. So then I was oh, right, okay, right. Well, now I can run. Now I can jump on a springboard. Now I can start to do this, rather than being oh, right now I can't do anything and I got to get the hardest vault back. How am I going to get there when right now I'm here? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, you're giving another great nugget for any athlete there. And I'll just give you a bit of an insight as to what I do with athletes in a scenario like that. Our minds, it represents a problem in a certain way. We experience all of our life through our sensory system. What we see, what we hear, what we feel, taste and smell. So subconsciously, when we have a problem, the subconscious mind will represent that in some way as some kind of image. It could be a metaphorical image. It could be an image of yourself in some way. And when somebody starts to get overwhelmed by a problem, that image that is being represented subconsciously, I ask the athlete to just think about the problem and then notice what image appears. What can you see when you do that? And often what ends up coming is a big image in the mind that's really close to them. It's overwhelming them. And they're looking at this thing thinking, oh my God, like, as you're saying there, I'm not even running yet. And now I've got to get to this level of being able to execute, these skills. And that image in their mind is literally overwhelming them. It's too much. Mm. And so one thing that an athlete can do is, first of all, is just notice that image, and acknowledge it. But then when you relax, you can actually take it and push it further away. Take the image and push it further away. So that just gets a bit of breathing space between the problem and yourself. And then it's about, there's lots of other things that you can do. But like what you have then done is, right, it comes back to the question. So this is the challenge. This is the problem. I've got to be able to get back to performing these routines, these skills, How am I going to get there? How can I break this down into manageable steps like you did and like you did there? The first step, I've just got to be able to start sprinting again. So you don't need to worry about the big goal. Let's just focus on the sprinting down that track. Then the next bit, then the next, and just be able to chunk a problem into pieces and then work on one at a time, and then slowly but surely, you'll start getting closer back to being able to do more advanced things in relation to your goal. Whereabouts are you with that recovery now? What are you able to? Are you pretty much back in full swing with your training now?
Yeah, so kind of very much back on all 4 events again. We kind of recently been through a bit of a blip where I've had a little bit of pain in that ankle that we're kind of speaking to the physios and the doctors about, and very much getting on top of that. But the plan is to be back competing on all 4 events again by kind of August, September time.
Nice.
So yeah, we're kind of very much coming out the other side of it now. Yeah. Kind of, to be fair, it's been a very good recovery. From within 3 weeks, I was out of the crutches and back walking again.
Wow.
So yeah, we kind of mainly got everything back. We're now just kind of in the phase of, I've got all the skills. We just now got to put them together in a routine and then be fit enough to kind of put them all together and then be competition ready.
Yeah.
But yeah, we are definitely getting there. I would say I'm about 70-80% there now.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah.
I want to be cautious of time, as I know you've got is it a physio appointment coming up, so got to get working on that injury. So I've got 3 last questions that I pretty much ask everybody. What would you say is your superpower? I believe that all athletes have multiple superpowers, strengths. But if you could pin something down, one thing down, one superpower that you have that has either throughout time as a gymnast or in the last Commonwealth Games competition that you did, what's the one superpower that's enabled you to achieve, the great things that you have done, or the great thing that you did do in that one particular event?
I think I would say for me personally, kind of very much being in the mindset of, I know what I want to achieve, and very being motivated to achieve that goal. I think even way back when I was injured as a youngster, what kept going in my head was, I know I've got something else to do in gymnastics. And then after Gold Coast coming back, it was, I know that I can still do something in the sport. I know that I can achieve more. So kind of, and even after coming back from Birmingham, I know that I've got it in me to compete again.
Yeah.
It might be slightly different things at each stage in my career, but I've always had that in my head of, I know that I can do this. I know that I've got more to prove in the sport. So I'm willing to kind of go through the challenges to prove to myself what I know I can do.
Excellent. Next question, second to last question. In order to do what you do and have done in gymnastics, what would you say is the biggest factor in enabling you to do that? Would you say it's your physical abilities, learning all those, really challenging skills, building up your fitness, mastering all those techniques? Or is it mental? Which, if you could put a percentage on it, which has the biggest, influence on your ability to perform? The mental side of handling the occasion and all the other things that come with it, or having the actual skill and ability to do it? As a percentage, where would you put the physical and the mental in order to be able to do what you do?
I think if you asked me that question like 4 or 5 years ago, I would have said absolutely physical. You got to be able to do the skills to be able to compete it. But definitely now, I would say it's 50-50, if not slightly more on the mental side of it. Because if you're not mentally in it, then the physical side of it, no matter how much you're physically ready to compete, if mentally you're not there, or you're distracted, or you're worried about something, no matter how many hours you've put in the gym, if you're mentally not there in the day, then it's not going to happen, which is what I've realised of my own experiences. So I would definitely say at least 50-50, if not maybe slightly more mental than physical.
Yeah. And I've asked that question to athletes that I've worked with and people that have been on this podcast, and the number of people that I even say as high as 80% mental. Had a world champion discus thrower who was battling in herself between, is it 80 or 90% mental? And what I then say, whatever percentage it is, even if it's just 10% mental and 90% physical, with the athletes who I work with, I'll ask them that question, and then I ask them, so how much mental training are you doing every week? Psychological training. And then the face goes blank.
Yeah.
And then they start to realize, well, I'm saying whatever percentage that they've given, they then do nothing about that. If all an athlete is doing is working on the physical, do more physical, well, that's what all the other athletes are doing.
Yeah.
Everybody's, when you get to your level, you're all pretty much doing, the same amount of training, same amount of hours, similar training methods, similar routines. You're aiming for the similar sort of score and difficulty levels. It's then, well, what is that person who goes and gets the gold or gets a medal? What have they done differently? How are they approaching sport differently? And a big part of that is the mental game. And there's numerous repeated studies done on the impact of mental rehearsal and physical rehearsal.
Yeah.
And it's been done with pianists. It's been done with lifting weights. It's been done with basketball, shooting basketball hoops, where they split them into groups. And one group spends a month, doing their physical thing. So with the basketball one, in fact, I'll do the gym one because this one surprised me the most. They had to do bicep curls, X number of times a week for a month. And they measured their muscle girth, their strength, on all these other measurements. And then they came back a month later. And then they had another group doing the exact same thing, but they were not allowed to lift the weight. They were only allowed to imagine lifting the weight, getting into really, energized state of mind and imagining lifting the weights. And when they came back, they had both improved to the same amount. Yet one group had not even lifted a weight, and the other group's muscle strength and size had increased just through practicing in the mind. And then there's this other guy called Jose de Silva. He started doing a lot of work into not for sport necessarily, but he ended up paying a university out of his own money to research this. And then he did a study where he had more than two groups. He had the physical practicing group, the mental rehearsal group, and then he had a third group, and the third group did both. And when they did the group that did the both, their results were way higher than the other two. And so my advice to any athletes is to start finding ways, whether it's your own individual techniques or going seeking help, about working about how you're going to develop that mental side of your sport, and especially for yourself. Now, as you're saying, you're getting that a bit older. You've been doing this for so long now. You have to be smarter about doing what you're doing. You've had to learn that, haven't you? And maybe the mental side of it, using more visualization to rehearse and realign and ingrain the skills in your mind more, which can make you take 10% off in your training that week. Could be something that could help you in some way, couldn't it?
Yeah, I think it's definitely athletes all need to realize how much the mental side of it is just as important. Because maybe sometimes be like, if we're not doing as much training, then they'll stress and be like, oh, I've not done enough this week. But like very much what I've had to do throughout being injured is visualize myself doing the routines and how I feel and what I see when I'm visualizing doing it, because I can't physically do it right now. Whereas like at some points it's been like, oh, like I really need to actually be doing this rather than just like sit and visualizing it. But how important that's been for me to then, when I physically can do it, to then help me get things back has been mega, really.
Fantastic. Last question. What's your definition or meaning of achieving excellence to you?
I think now I wouldn't put achieving excellence as getting results or getting medals. For me now, it's very much achieving excellence is me enjoying what I'm doing, me being happy with what I'm doing, me being proud of what I'm doing day in, day out. And if I go on the competition floor, regardless of the result, being proud of what I've put out there on that day. If I don't get a medal, but I'm happy with what I've done, then that's all I can do.
Fantastic. I'm so glad you said that. I really am, Shannon. I personally believe that you're giving yourself the greatest chance of achieving even more by having this mindset of enjoying it, enjoy the process, enjoy the event. And what will come is what will come. There's a book written by a NFL coach saying, the score will take care of itself. You do the work. And the score will take care of itself, and I wish you all the luck in the world with it, Shannon. I'm sure you're going to come back and have a completely different experience and experiences going forwards in the next few years. So I've absolutely loved speaking with you and getting to know you and learning more about your story, Shannon. So thank you very much for coming on and giving up your time, and I hope that your recovery from your injury, is completely behind you, and your body is healed and ready to doing what you do best.
Thank you very much. It's been great to kind of chat through these things, because I don't feel like as athletes we do it often. Yeah. So thanks for having me on and chatting through all these things.
No problem. That's amazing. See you later.
Thank you. Bye.
Cool. That was great, Shannon. Thank you very much there. I was hoping to get that finished a few minutes earlier for you.
That's all right.
Because I know you've got to go. So, thanks again, Shannon. You gave so many, really insightful things that people can take from this and learn from, because that's what this is about. It's about trying to help some 8, 9, 10-year-old version of you, to do what you've done. I'm actually working with a 12-year-old gymnast at the moment, who can struggle with certain things about getting nervous and uptight and things like this. And as I was going through it, I was just thinking she's going to love being able to watch this and listen, and learn, from some of the things that you're talking about. And so, because so many athletes go through a similar process, but it feels like you're on your own at times, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely does. And I think it's just important that we feel, as like the position I'm in, having little gymnasts kind of look up to me then kind of voicing that it's not all sunshines and rainbows all the time.
Yeah.
They all see the end result, but they don't see the kind of struggles that go along with it. And they might be feeling it, but they're like, God, how is she managing that?
Yeah.
And I think it's definitely, I've realized how important it is to kind of go out there and talk about these things.
Yeah.
Kind of make these kids realize, but this is normal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And as I said, you best go because you've got about 8 minutes. So I will leave it there. So thank you very much again, Shanna. I will be in touch again soon.
Yeah.
Enjoy the rest of the day. See you later.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Bye.
Oh, it's a tough act to follow, but he's done it again.
Excellence can be created, it can be replicated, it can be taught.
The In the Game Podcast, Season 2.